Year of our Lord 915. Day of the Heavy Axe. It's been 6 days since we got surrounded by darkness. We don't understand why or how, but we can be sure it has something to do with the Great Maw. With Cruniac. The road under our tracks changed at some point, from mud to polished basalt. The cobblestone slabs have wagon wheel grooves in them, as if a million carts have made this journey before us. This can't be. We were in the northern baronies, where there was nothing resembling a trade route for the past dozen years. The roads little more than flat ditches. The darkness is different now. The light of our lanterns only travels a few meters in front of us. There is no noise, no birds, no crickets, nothing. Just mute blackness. The lads are horrified. All of them except the halforks think we are in hell. The animals in our group are skittish. Some freeze for minutes, refusing to move. We make shit progress on a road to nowhere. The Christians amongst us pray out loud. I didn't hear a peep this time from the burghers. At least it's not as cold as it used to be. And it stopped raining. Our supplies are running out, especially our water. We were used to having wells all around us. We were not prepared for this. Soon we got parched. There was little to do but keep going. The cursed road should have led somewhere. As we made our way on the path ahead of us, some of the lads started picking up sounds, as if a horde of barefooted runners was making its way towards us from all around. We simply formed up for combat on the sides of our trail. There was no time to draw up the wagons in a fort. Silent and grotesque, the apparitions made their way into our light perimeter. They had a vaguely humanoid form, strong arms and legs, a mane of black hair, talons and tusks bigger than a bear's. A plethora of goat-like horns adorned their brows. Nightmarish creatures. They charged us with low guttural snarls. The lads were shit-scared. Most of us quaffed nerves potions. Blades in the night. The area was covered in sharp shadows, moving hectically with the cadence of desperate combat. Our back ranks held lanterns high above their heads to give the front ranks enough light to be able to lay slaughter. I was relieved to see that the monsters were killable. We chopped at their ranks, and they fell in droves. Our lines held in formation despite the horrible appearance of our foe. This made the ambush a winnable scenario. The enemy did not use weapons. They tried their best to grapple with our lads. Fortunately for us, they did not overwhelm us numerically in such a disproportional way to be able to pile drive us. I realized that the combat was all about morale. We held fast in the face of our grisly foe, and this gave us a fighting chance. The enemy seemed not to be expecting much resistance. It soon got disheartened by our alchemically fueled steadfastness. As the beast started to waver, the whistle was sound, and the lads started to push back and advance down the fronts. Black bile poured out of the gored monsters. The basalt beneath our feet was slick with the opal guts and viscera. Soon the enemy was retreating. We did not pursue. The battle finished, we took time to patch up the wounded, carve the foes for pig feed, and prepare for the next encounter. Several dozen fallen foes, a few wounded on our side, mostly from talons puncturing mail. The corpse creatures were all loaded in the wagons. We had never faced such a foe, and I was sure that we could profit from this if we ever got back home. The blood of the enemy was more viscous than normal dark bloods, and other than its color, there was little other resemblance between the dark bloods from home and this nightmarish new foe. Alchemists would pay well to study these new creatures. That is, if we ever returned to our known land. The alchemicals were tolerated decently well by the company this turnaround. No heart failures. A few groggy from the withdrawal took turns resting in the backs of the wagons. It was no doubt a sin to force the body into such a brutal way. Alchemicals were considered a necessary evil by the High Church. There was little to do but use them if you wanted to remain a relevant piece on the battlefield. It simply allowed for a different violence output. Dark Bloods were using stronger alchemicals than we were. They cared little about a bunch of them giving up the ghost after a battle. We strived to lose as few as possible each time. We circled the lads that would use the chems each battle, so that through rotation, everyone got a chance to recuperate and stabilize his inner workings before another augmented bout. We used alchemicals, prayed for forgiveness, and a few of us actually felt forgiven. It was sort of a common feeling that the Lord understood we were opposing evil, and that we had to resort to alchemicals in order to keep the light of humanity burning. As I am writing these lines, it dawns on me how out of touch and skewed my logic has become. Too much time on the road, too many encounters, too much violence. I've become a zealot. Without the correcting presence of the church body, my theology has shifted towards a complacent utilitarianism. We have agreed to agree that the good Lord was on our side. I am a Protestant. I believe that God works through the church body as well. There was no way to hold a council of deaconess in a land where you did not even know what reality meant. So we kept our mouths shut about our misgivings, swallowed the recovery potions, fixed our canullas, and kept marching on. You learn humility soon in the old world. Always at the mercy of higher powers that make or break your reality on a whim. A stirring of Cruniac, a jolt from the old one, a push from Ekna, a capricious demand from a non-dormant fae. All these powers can shift reality in such a way that it becomes unrecognizable. Such is life. You learn to adapt. You stop pretending that everything has to make sense, and you understand soon that no matter what the whims of the elder monstrosities are, you simply have to make sure you have your brothers around, your weapons at a ready and enough water to get you through the day, and food, always dwindling, always not enough. A lifetime of borderline starvation is so common in the burgs. We were fortunate in this respect. Being soldiers meant we always were fed rations. This kept our bodies reasonably fit. We felt this difference when we fought malnourished bandits or cannibal hordes. They were malnourished, their arms weakened by starvation. Most of the time we were putting them out of their misery. I did not expect what came next. The Halfork warrior priests led the company in public corporate prayer. Everyone seemed to be taking part. At least there was no one openly objecting. We stood together in the bellows of a dark reality and prayed to our Lord that He delivers us from the evils of anomalies and zone shifts. We prayed for forgiveness and guidance, that He may bless us with His Holy Ghost, so that we may discern His will in these trying times. The petition prayer done, we gave thanks for the blessing of salted pig flesh for eating and stale water for drinking, showing just how disheveled we had become. There was a constant state of chaos and haste in our prayer life. It would have been normal to form the prayer on a body of strong gratitude fundamentals, so that the rest of the prayer would form in a composed manner, ending in a sober petition protocol. We were nowhere that stoic. We gave in to the petition part from the first words. Committing change to mind, I've updated my journal and pushed forward. Soon we were on the march again. It was hard not to be paralyzed with dread, advancing in a world with no bearings, not knowing what was what. Training kicked in, however. Echelon front all the way. Prioritize and execute. We had to reach a fortifiable position so we could make camp and rest to recuperate after the battles. We had been physically active in 2 other encounters before this third one that happened after the shift. Exhaustion was a high risk factor in our current situation. We were attacked 2 more times as we began setting up camp. Each time we had to abandon the positions due to the stench the nightmare creatures left as they died. It was impossible to ignore since it found its way into us, even through our respirators. As they were slain, the nightmare creatures left a scent in the air, repulsive in a visceral way, without necessarily having an odor. It created an instinctive cringe in all the senses, to such an extent that it was impossible to ignore. Vomiting was common spread amongst the lads after the battles. What was weird was that the foul smell did not seem to be emanating from the corpses, but from the actual places of slaying. We pushed on, knowing the enemy was succeeding in tiring us down. Small dim lights seemed to court our attention in our peripheral vision. Fey lights, the lads called them. I gave the redundant order to ignore them. We did. We stayed on track, kept advancing even if we had no reason to keep doing so other than sheer stubbornness to not give up. I gave the order to dump a quarter of our cargo. Thus we took turns resting in the wagons as the convoy kept on the move. Skirmishes kept us from resting in any proper manner, but we took whatever substitute was available. The basalt-like surface of the road reflected the light of our lanterns in such a way that the road we were on seemed to be illuminated by an iridescent aura. More so, in between the slabs of the pavement, small white pebbles were inlaid. These stones seemed to capture some of the light we were emitting in such a way that they appeared to glow even after we had passed from their vicinity. We were leaving a light trail behind us. Also, the Fey lights from all around seemed to increase in numbers, to the point where they outnumbered us 5-1. So we were going to die in a nameless darkness, somewhere on the path. We made our peace with this. The monks were praying a hymn. The lads started quaffing their strings potions. The foe was trying to get us to be too afraid to fight, making a light show out of how outnumbered we were. Whatever it was, it did not count on us being filled with alchemicals. There was bloodlust in the lads. Even exhausted in this state, the chems kept us all eager to shed blood. They charged us without warning, from the left flank. Nightmares, low guttural howls, something feline at the sound. There was no way we were winning this fight. I gave a signal to drink the last stand potions, a heavy mix. A mix you don't get back from, but you know it makes a man fight like an absolute unit. Most of us drank up. By the time they reached our line, we were high as griffins and just as belligerent. We tore into the foe like steel-clad mastiffs. The nightmares seemed demonic in appearance. Horns, talons, scales, manes that seemed to move on their own. Yet they had flesh hearts and minds. They were caught off guard by our murderous zeal. They were fighting rabid men. Our line was tight. We used only stabbing weapons not to get in each other's way. The point was to avoid grappling with the devils. Our armors, heavy with good quality steel, kept the gelatinous barbs away from our flesh. The heavy riveted mail from our joints was usually our weakest spot, but it proved enough to block the nightmare's barbs most of the time. The foe was much stronger physically. Tentacles would ensnare some of our number and pull them into the enemy midst. The darkness would prevent us from witnessing their fates, but we had no illusions. The line did not falter. The alchemicals were giving us an unmatched fervor. The demons were taken aback by such a fierce display. The foe they were used to must have been unenhanced, no doubt. We were slowly grinding the enemy's numbers down. Their physiology made them almost immune to some of our hits. Slashes and even some stabs landed on the demon flesh would knit right before our eyes. Our hefty hits, however, did manage to incapacitate a large number of fiends. Looped-off limbs, crushed skulls did the job just right. The scales were tipping in our favor. That's when our hearing died. All fell silent in the midst of battle. We could not figure out why that happened, but we were relentless and did not slow down our grinding violence. Black fog erupted between my legs. Like an ascending air bubble in a well, it flew upwards, throwing me back off my feet, marking my thighs with heavy dents. My armor saved me. The creature that marked it was levitating a man's height off the ground. Tall, lean, nude, and with a was-like complexion. A flying cadaver with a face so deformed it looked etched in wax by a madman. Its eyes were topaz pools that shimmered with ill will. Its mouth was filled full with a worm-like tongue that seemed to loll on its own accord. Like a rabid dog on a leash, it yanked out of the mouth and tried to reach me from a distance, squirming and writhing with anticipation, trying to close in. The monster's hands were covered with glowing scribbles that resembled a witch's hex. It held fingers that contorted with diabolical significance. There was a shimmer around its hand gestures. Like ink that dissolved in water, light seemed to emanate from the monster's extremities. The glass visor from my helm went black and crackled full of white angular vines. Searing heat boiled my joints alive. I was being torched. I stopped, dropped, and rolled. My throat went numb as my skin boiled with blisters in my armor. Mute screams escaped me as I was being cooked alive. I broke open my visor and beheld my assailant floating above me and gesturing with wide arcs, gleaming light trailing behind its fingers. The creature did not seem to mind the couple dozen bolts sticking out of its flesh. A mesh net flew over its head. Ropes pulled abruptly brought the fiend down on the ground. A couple poleaxes started hacking at its body. Chunks flew. Bones cracked. Metal shimmered within the flesh. Soon a broken bronze-encased skeleton was left as a token of the creature, its eyes still glazed by the yellow light that pulsed from within. His arms were flailing about trying to cast something as the lands were smashing what was left of the metal-encased bones. As the men worked the polearms and were finishing ruining the creature, it made a last sequence of gestures with its lolling tentacle tongue. A brother used a partisan to sever the creature's mandible along with its inner tentacle, finally putting an end to the husk's demented flailing about. The polearms kept smashing the figure until there was very little left to tell of its once humanoid shape. I tried to get up but felt the flesh on my body jolt with searing pain. I was cooked inside my armor again. I could see others around me, charred in their armors. They were not moving, however. None of them could afford my worm gambeson lining. It did its job. I was laying at the epicenter of what was the first contact point of 2 consecutive fireballs. We lost many brothers, most of them from heart failure after they came down the last wind potion, the rest from attrition in the struggle with the nightmares, and another dozen to the fireball pair. A slaughter, in a fight that paid nothing. Miserable lot. The Necrosavant head was missing its mandible. The lolling tongue would not stop lolling. We flung it in the smallest barrel and placed it under heavy chains and locks. Seeing the small lock-ridden barrel move on its own was highly disturbing. The head was missing its insides. We filled it with salt and stuck that within a metal box. In case we ever returned home, it was going to the questers, no doubt. I received another troll blood potion, and my skinless flesh began to mend. The old green scabs started appearing on my body, and it made me sick to think that I owed my life to dark blood experiments in the fringe areas of alchemy ethics. I thanked the good Lord for protecting me once more. His hand kept me alive in the fires of what could only be called hell. In a few days I would be able to fight again. Until then, I had time to piece together an opinion about what happened. Maybe learn something from the debacle. It was clear enough that the nightmares were acting as someone's foot soldiers, perhaps for the lich-like apparition. The Necrosavant that we crushed may have been one of the leaders, or perhaps it was just an enforcer itself. Its weave-touched claws did not puncture my leg armor, but that was most likely due to the heavy wards that encase my armor. This was a lesson learned. The weaving from our world carried weight even here, where we were wandering. That sparked a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there was a way back home. The only question was, where did we have it worse, really? Back home, we'd be Cruniac feed. At least here, the cold did not bite you at every turn. The sky did not rain Cruniac's gut on top of you. The nightmares were strong and fast, deadly and grappling and implacable if able to surround the foe. They would break morale, however, if faced with utter resolution. In the end, that's what saved us this turnaround. After the Necrosavant got smashed, a huge fire flash covered the battle line. Everyone had their hair bristled, and when the smoke cleared, the enemy was retreating, loping away in full flight. The nightmares are not demons. More akin to ghouls, maybe. A stronger, more refined breed of ghouls. With their elongated upper limbs and their stocky, strong legs, they looked the part. This meant that given enough time, we could specialize versus such an opponent. Find a way to minimize losses. The following days, the road started to change elevation. We reached a point where we had to take frequent breaks for our oxen to catch their breaths. High up the trail, from deep within the darkness, a glimmering light shone. If we could have, we would have avoided it. But it was the only way the trail went. In a day's worth of traveling, we reached what looked like a barricaded improvised lighthouse. It used to be a windmill. Instead of its wind sails, there was a glass dome with some sort of framed lenses that probably amplified the light that glimmered from within. In front of the building, a small dwarf was waiting for us grimly. The conversation was brief. He offered passage back to our world in return for the blood he would extract from the nightmare corpses we were carrying. We agreed to almost his full demand, keeping a few of the corpses unspoiled as a token for a certain generous alchemist back home. When pressed about the motivation for his weird demand, Eitri, the lighthouse keeper, explained that the blood of the devils was called Stygian, and it would burn within his lighthouse's lantern. It was a fey light, yes, and the fuel was wicked, but the light was invisible to the foe, and it would signal hope to all that wandered those netherworld wastes. Apparently, there were quite a few such wanderers. A full burg formed by such strangers, some 2 centuries ago, inside the valley, on the other side of the hill. We just escalated. I would have made the trip there just for the novelty of the notion. We had many wounded, however, and I needed a score of troll blood potions for the lads. Back in the old world was the only source I knew for such a peculiar source of healing. The exchange was made. We were given fresh water to drink, after which we were instructed to get drunk and lose our way by not following the road. That was supposed to get us back home somehow. We did not have enough booze for all the lads, but in the end we did lose our bearings within the darkness. We were tied to each other so that we could not get separated. It was a weird and dangerous challenge. If we were to be attacked during our process, we would have been crushed. Yet lost we were by the end of the 3rd candle wandering the wastes. And morning did come soon enough. From the pitch darkness of the nether night, dim rays of light filtered through what seemed to be Cruniac's gut. This stirred no joyful reaction in me. Just a mechanical set of calculations about where exactly we were in the old world, and how we were going to get enough supplies for reaching the Burg of Travium, where the troll blood potions could be secured. We did stop, however, and we praised the Lord Christ in public common prayer for the chance of fighting the devil we knew, back in our home, and not the stranger in a strange land. It is a wonder what people can get accustomed to. We were almost glad for the dim light that reached us, glad at the prospect of smoked, salted bacon with a mix of eggs and a flagon of blood wine. The nightmare corpses were highly appraised by all the alchemists we visited. Coins would fill our coffers. I wondered what sort of alchemicals might be distilled from such gruesome, unholy creatures. We boarded up in one of the common warehouse inns. We traded in everything we had to get enough potions for everyone, and also repair our gear to get ready for the coming contracts. I checked on our nightmare buyer, out of professional interest. I made him promise he would offer the resulting nightmare potion to us first. Maybe this would give us a boost over the other mercenary bands. We needed the edge badly. Competition was a beast at that time. Every mercenary cohort tried to play the part of the night contingent, hoping to land a Cruniac flesh caravan escort. After 2 weeks, we finally got a message to meet with Kalisark in the docks district. We did so. The Sea Crosser wanted to give us a first-glance demonstration for his new alchemical. For some reason, there were 5 halfling rats with rocks tied to their feet next to the pontoon. I disliked where things seemed to go. Another callous demonstration of how satanic a man can be towards slaves. So I made sure that Kalisark did not go on with his intention. The plan was to drown the little creature to show the effects of his new brew. Apparently all the users of the serum, after resuscitation, would share a telepathic bond if they drowned in the same water or in close vicinity at the same time. This was useful, horrible as an idea, but would be great if I had all the sergeants do this thing before large battles. The power to synchronize maniples from across the field would definitely give us the edge we were looking for. A murderous smile covered my face. Kalisark looked afraid. Good. We took care of his guards. That means we killed them, and we abducted Kalisark. The wretch would end up cooking potions for us if all went well. The only issue was getting him out of the burg tonight. His presence would be missed by morning in his quarters. The governor of the Borg would seek his heathen brewer desperately. I can barely imagine the vast amounts of wealth this asset was producing. Now he would work for us, for a piece of pork and a flagon of ale per day. We started packing in a hurry. Fortunately, the lads were accustomed with such hastily made escapes. This was not their first tussle. They did not need to know what was up. I simply gave the code-red catchphrase, and everyone started with his allotted task protocol to pack the camp and move out. We managed to sneak the alchemist out of Travium. He found himself working shoulder to shoulder with the other 5 lads we collected. To be frank, I was hoping the rats would join us by free choice. And they did. I would have hated to feel like a slaver after forcing them into servitude. Gladly they offered to join us when we unbound them. They used to work for the Sea Crosser as slaves, and now they would work with him still, but as equals, and with food pay and protection assured. Such swell lands we were. I knew better. Such is life. The half-orcs picked up on the way things developed. I felt them tensing up when the halflings were thinking their options over. I wonder what the freed half-breeds would have done if given the chance to stand up for the little ones. Besides an inevitable sermon, they might have gone violent. They are an impulsive lot when outside of the battlefield mindset. I hated the idea of slavery. Don't get me wrong. We've always used forced labor. I ran thousands of orcs into the ground in mobile labor camps. I also forced human prisoners to work in order to pay their own ransoms. But I've always set them free in the end. Even filthy Norseman raiders. In what Kalisark is concerned, the deal was, we would set him free after he would brew us a cistern of the new miracle drug. The much-anticipated potions were trial-tested on the Sea Crosser and a bunch of orc prisoners. The tests went well. The orcs fought as a cohesive unit in the tests, without priorly knowing each other. The specimens were collected from different broods, so the phenotypes would differ slightly. After the test fight, we fed the heads to the pigs, along with the bodies this time. It would just not do to have an alchemist find traces of the link potions in the dark blood brains, even if it meant losing some coin. I trial-tested the potion myself. I wanted to experiment something even riskier, however. I wanted to try and link a dog to a human. That would make the Battle Brothers bond with the dogs, senses fuse in an unparalleled way, making our scouts exponentially more efficient. One of the lads caught a stray mutt. There were no volunteers up for getting drowned yet. I decided I should set an example and took the task upon myself. I made the lads drown us both in the same barrel. We both fought the brothers as they were drowning us. I just could not force myself to relax. Neither did the dog. He managed to bite one of the half-breeds doing the deed, and from what I can remember, I knocked someone out in the throes of it all. After we were resuscitated, I could not make the dog to trust us in any way. We tied a rope to his collar so we could make him follow us, but the beast simply did not like us at all. Fair. The link was there, however. Other than outright aggression and hostility, I could also perceive some sort of perception feedback. It felt like I was reading thought tracks in his mind. It took a deliberate focus effort on my part, however. I would not see myself doing this in a battle scenario. Maybe the problem was with the dog not trusting us. The experiment would require more testing. I already had an idea. Maybe if we got the dog dirt drunk before we drown him, it would not lose his trust in us. and so we could make him collaborate after we would resuscitate and sober him up. It was an unwholesome thing to do, but so was losing a fight when you are protecting the food convoy for a few tens of thousands of people. Losing was not an option for us. We accepted this needed more time and continued our journey on the road. I was very hopeful, however. Finally, things seemed to be looking up for our band. The Sons of Dismas might be making the huge leap forward and take on missions coming from the noble houses themselves. We would need a diplomat for such a task. And diplomats don't come cheap. But coin might not be a problem in the future. I was giddy as a goblin about the whole way things were shaping up. Back amongst the living in the old world, and a likely path to prosperity. I made sure to express my apologies to Kalisark, but there was no way we could have afforded to pay for his alchemicals. I assured him we would keep fighting hard for the peoples of the Bergs, and that he did the Bergs a favor by giving us a head start in the mercenary race. He still seemed sour over the whole thing. Good.